The tranquil morning mist of Emmerdale, usually a gentle balm, hung heavy with an unseen tension, a suffocating shroud over the picturesque village. The idyllic facade was cracking, revealing the raw, beating heart of its inhabitants, each entangled in a web of secrets, fear, and burgeoning danger. This wasn't just another sunrise, it was the dawn of a reckoning, a day when innocent lives would be irrevocably altered, and the shadow of darkness would stretch further than ever before. In the humble, yet now ominous, abode of April and Dylan, a fragile peace teetered on the brink of collapse. April, her young eyes still holding glimmers of defiance, found herself a prisoner in her own home, the invisible chains of Ray's debt tightening around her spirit. Her conversation with Ross, though a desperate plea for solace, had been a careful dance around the abyss. She had hinted at the crushing weight, the constant fear, but the true horror, the insidious nature of Ray's demands. The burner phone clutched like a hot coal in her pocket, the chilling prospect of becoming a drug dealer remained a festering secret, a venomous serpent coiling in her gut. She pictured the cold, hard glint in Ray's eyes as he offered her the opportunity, a macabre charade of generosity that masked his predatory intent. The very air she breathed felt tainted, each inhale a reminder of the path she was being forced down. Dylan, meanwhile, a raw nerve exposed, feigned enthusiasm for his new job at the depot, a desperate masquerade for Ray's benefit. Every glance from the drug lord, every casual suggestion, was a fresh prick of fear, a chilling reminder of the puppet master pulling his strings. He could almost feel Ray's cold breath on his neck, whispering promises of power and protection that reeked of deceit. He knew, with the sickening certainty, that Ray's plans for them both involved an intricate, sinister game, one where they were merely pawns, destined to be sacrificed. The weight of his silence, the burden of protecting April from the full, terrifying truth, was a crushing burden, threatening to suffocate him. He found himself constantly looking over his shoulder, the ghost of Ray's presence lurking in every shadow, every quiet corner. Meanwhile, the usually bustling Emmerdale surgery hummed with an unsettling undercurrent of neglect. Claudette Anderson, a formidable matriarch whose concern for Dr. Liam Kavanagh bordered on a maternal possessiveness, made another desperate plea. Her voice, usually sharp and direct, softened with a genuine plea as she urged Liam to prioritize his health, to attend his prostate check. "Liam," she implored, her eyes filled with a foreboding she couldn't articulate, "this isn't just about you. It's about your patients, your family. Don't be a fool." But Liam, his mind a whirlwind of professional anxieties and a deep-seated denial, remained stubbornly oblivious. His head, indeed, was firmly in the sand, a precarious ostrich-like stance against the encroaching reality of his own mortality. He waved off Claudette's concerns with a dismissive hand, the very act a poignant foreshadowing of the disaster to come. The cancelled appointment wasn't just a missed date, it was a rejection of self-preservation, a fatalistic embrace of his own impending doom. Little did he know, the clock on his well-being was ticking with an alarming urgency, each tick echoing the unspoken symptoms that were already silently screaming for attention. The chaos at the surgery, a flimsy excuse for his inaction, was merely a tragic smokescreen, obscuring the grim truth that was waiting to ambush him. In a stark contrast of simmering domestic tension, the Fox Milligan household became a stage for another kind of drama. The first rays of dawn were still shyly caressing the windows when Caleb, ever the enigma, attempted to slip out of the house like a phantom in the early morning gloom. His movements were precise, practiced, almost predatory. But Ruby Fox Milligan, a woman whose instincts were as sharp as her wit, was not so easily fooled. Her eyes, which missed nothing, snapped open, catching his furtive departure. Caleb, her voice, laced with a mixture of suspicion and exasperation, cut through the silence like a razor. "And just where do you think you're going?" Caleb, caught off guard, a flicker of panic in his usually impassive eyes, stumbled over his words. His cagey responses, a flimsy veil over his clandestine activities, only served to heighten Ruby's suspicions. The air between them crackled with unspoken accusations, with the weight of secrets yet to be unveiled. Ruby, a tigress protecting her territory, could sense a dangerous game afoot, and she was determined to unravel the truth, no matter how unsettling. The subtle tremor in Caleb's hand as he fumbled with his keys, the slight hesitation in his voice, these tiny cracks in his carefully constructed facade were all Ruby needed. The game of cat and mouse had begun, and the stakes were higher than either of them dared to imagine. As the day progressed, the threads of these disparate lives began to intertwine, forming a tapestry woven with peril and desperation. The seemingly mundane routines of Emmerdale were now infused with a thrilling sense of impending catastrophe, each moment a prelude to the dramatic revelations and shocking twists that lay just beyond the horizon. The village, once a haven of rustic charm, was slowly transforming into a crucible of human drama, where every secret held the potential to explode, and every choice carried the weight of destiny. The morning after, a palpable unease settled over Emmerdale, thicker than the dew on the cobblestones. The sun, though shining, seemed to cast longer, more ominous shadows, as if the village itself held its breath, sensing the escalating storm. Today, hidden agendas would begin to unravel. Fragile alliances would be tested, and the whispers of treachery would grow into undeniable roars. At the heart of a burgeoning domestic maelstrom, Caleb Fox Milligan, still reeling from Ruby's piercing gaze, found himself caught in a tightening net of suspicion. His attempted stealth, a pathetic failure, had ignited a fire in Ruby's eyes that promised relentless pursuit. "You think I'm a fool, Caleb?" she'd hissed, her voice a low, dangerous growl that still echoed in his ears. The flimsy excuses he'd stammered out had only fueled her insatiable curiosity, turning suspicion into an unyielding resolve. Now, as the day unfolded, Ruby became his shadow, her every glance a probing question, her every movement a silent challenge. She watched him with the intensity of a predator, dissecting his nervous habits, his fleeting glances at his burner phone, the subtle shift in his demeanor whenever a certain name, perhaps Ray, perhaps another shadowy figure, was even whispered. Caleb, for his part, tried desperately to maintain his composure, but the pressure was immense. He found himself fabricating elaborate stories, his mind racing to construct believable alibis for his clandestine meetings. Each lie, however, felt like another brick in the wall he was building between himself and Ruby, a wall that threatened to imprison them both. He knew the stakes were astronomically high, his intricate dance with Ray, a dangerous game of high-stakes gambling and dubious investments in the illicit drug trade, could not only cost him everything but also drag Ruby down with him. The thought sent a jolt of icy fear through his veins. He remembered a heated, hushed conversation with Ray the previous night, where Ray's chilling words had cemented Caleb's commitment. "One wrong move, Caleb, and it's not just your pockets that will be empty. Think about your family." The implicit threat hung heavy, a dark cloud over his every decision. He found himself pacing, checking his phone obsessively, his mind a battlefield of conflicting loyalties and burgeoning paranoia. He knew Ruby wouldn't rest until she had the answers, and the terrifying truth was, those answers could shatter their world. Meanwhile, a different kind of dread began to manifest at the Emmerdale surgery, where Dr. Liam Kavanagh's denial was slowly giving way to a terrifying reality. His continued neglect of his own health, once a matter of stubborn pride, was now morphing into something far more sinister. Today, the subtle aches and pains that he had so cavalierly dismissed began to intensify, transforming into undeniable, excruciating warnings. During a routine consultation with a patient, a sudden, sharp pain lanced through him, causing his hand to tremble, almost dropping a medical instrument. He quickly covered it, forcing a professional smile, but inside, a cold wave of fear washed over him. Later, while reviewing patient files, he experienced a dizzy spell so profound that he had to brace himself against the desk, his vision momentarily blurring. The world seemed to tilt, and for a terrifying second, he thought he might pass out. Manpreet Sharma, ever observant, caught fleeting glimpses of his struggle. She noticed his pallor, the way he occasionally winced, the subtle tremor in his hands. Her professional instincts, honed over years of practice, were screaming at her. She tried to approach him discreetly. "Liam, are you all right? You seem a little off today." But Liam, still clinging to his tattered veil of denial, brushed her off with a curt "Just a long day, Manpreet. Nothing a strong coffee won't fix." His voice, however, lacked its usual confident timbre, a slight tremor betraying his internal battle. The image of the cancelled prostate check flashed in her mind, a stark reminder of his stubbornness. She began to suspect that his chaos at the surgery was merely a convenient distraction, a desperate attempt to ignore the undeniable signals his own body was sending. Manpreet felt a growing sense of alarm, a premonition that something far more serious was unfolding beneath Liam's stoic facade. She knew that if he continued to ignore these escalating symptoms, the consequences could be irreversible, a tragic tale of a healer who failed to heal himself. The clock was ticking not just for Liam, but for all those who cared for him, racing against a silent enemy that was growing stronger with every passing hour. The village, once a backdrop for gentle narratives, was now a stage for a high-stakes drama, where every character played a crucial role in an unfolding tragedy. Secrets, once safely buried, were beginning to claw their way to the surface, threatening to shatter the lives they touched and expose the dark underbelly of Emmerdale. The air was thick with anticipation, charged with the energy of inevitable confrontation and heartbreaking revelation. The midweek sun, usually a herald of renewed energy, cast a sickly, jaundiced light over Emmerdale. The air was thick with unspoken tension, a suffocating blanket woven from guilt, denial, and the ever-present threat of lurking darkness. Today, the tendrils of a serpent would tighten their grip, forcing characters into desperate corners and testing the very limits of their resilience. At the sprawling, often chaotic, depot, Dylan, buoyed by a forced and almost manic enthusiasm, threw himself into his new role, a desperate performance for Ray's benefit. He loaded crates, organized stock, his movements overly animated, a stark contrast to the churning anxiety within him. He was trying to convince himself, as much as anyone, that this opportunity was a blessing, a path to clearing April's insurmountable debt. But his feigned optimism was brutally shattered when his burner phone, clutched like a forbidden idol, vibrated with a chilling message, a text from Ray. Not a job directive, but an impromptu driving lesson. The words, seemingly innocuous, sent a jolt of icy dread through Dylan's veins. He knew what Ray's lessons truly entailed: not instruction, but indoctrination, not learning, but coercion. It was another step deeper into the abyss, another binding knot in the invisible chains that Ray was expertly weaving around him and April. He imagined Ray's cruel smile, the glint of power in his eyes, as he orchestrated this descent. The depot, once a symbol of honest work, now felt like a prison yard, and he, an unwilling recruit in Ray's nefarious army. He could already feel the moral compromise, the slow erosion of his own principles, a terrifying sacrifice he was making to protect the one he loved. Meanwhile, a different kind of anguish gnawed at Charity Dingle, a relentless torment far removed from the drug underworld. Her pregnancy, once a source of tentative joy, had become a crucible of guilt and uncertainty. The question of parentage, a whispered rumor that had spread like wildfire through the village, was now a public spectacle, threatening to unravel her already complicated life. Each sympathetic glance from a neighbor, each hushed conversation she overheard, felt like a fresh stab of accusation. She replayed the nights, the arguments, the moments of impulsive indiscretion, a cruel montage in her mind. The guilt, heavy and suffocating, clung to her like a shroud, making her physically ill. She knew she had to confront the truth, to reveal the father's identity, but the fear of judgment, the potential for irreparable damage to her relationships, kept her paralyzed. She cradled her burgeoning belly, a silent prayer for clarity, for a way out of this emotional labyrinth. The joy of new life was being overshadowed by the fear of its uncertain origins, and Charity felt herself teetering on the edge of a precipice, unsure if she could withstand the inevitable fall. In another corner of the village, Liam Kavanagh's world continued its terrifying unraveling. The chaos at the surgery, once a convenient excuse, was now a brutal reality, but the true chaos was within himself. His internal symptoms, once easily dismissed, had intensified to an alarming degree, demanding attention he stubbornly refused to give. Today, during a particularly busy clinic, the persistent discomfort in his lower abdomen sharpened into a searing pain, a relentless burning that made it almost impossible to concentrate. He found himself excusing himself repeatedly, retreating to the solitude of his consulting room, where he pressed his hand against his lower back, gritting his teeth against the agony. The denial, once a sturdy shield, was beginning to crack under the relentless assault of his own body. He caught his reflection in a small mirror, his face pale, drawn, with dark circles under his eyes, looking years older than his actual age. A wave of self-pity, quickly replaced by stubborn defiance, washed over him. "It's just stress," he muttered to himself, a hollow mantra he no longer fully believed. But the physical evidence was becoming undeniable, and the medical professional in him knew, with a chilling certainty, that he was walking a dangerous path. The very thought of acknowledging the truth, of facing a potential life-altering diagnosis, filled him with a terror that surpassed even the physical pain. He was trapped in a desperate struggle against himself, a battle he was slowly, agonizingly, losing. Meanwhile, back at the depot, the dynamic between Jai Sharma and Caleb Fox Milligan took a fascinating, and deeply troubling, turn. Jai, observant and shrewd, watched Caleb's management style with growing incredulity, bordering on outrage. Caleb, still trying to project an air of sophisticated control despite Ruby's relentless scrutiny, was making decisions that were not only unorthodox but dangerously reckless. He observed Caleb barking orders, making snap judgments that bordered on financial malpractice, and taking risks that seemed to defy all conventional business logic. Jai saw him cutting corners, manipulating figures, and pushing boundaries that clearly violated company policy. "What on earth are he thinking?" Jai muttered under his breath, watching Caleb dismiss a worried employee's concerns with a wave of his hand and a chillingly calm threat. Jai had always been a stickler for order and legitimate business, and Caleb's approach was a direct affront to everything he believed in. He couldn't shake the feeling that Caleb was not just a poor businessman, but a man playing a far more dangerous game, one with untold consequences. The depot, under Caleb's chaotic leadership, was not just inefficient, it felt like a ticking time bomb, poised to explode, and Jai, a reluctant witness, found himself caught in the impending blast radius. He knew he couldn't stand by idly, something far more sinister than mere mismanagement was at play, and he felt an uncomfortable obligation to uncover the truth, no matter how ugly. The atmosphere in Emmerdale was growing heavier, pregnant with the promise of revelations that would shake the village to its core. Each character, driven by their own fears, desires, and desperate hopes, was hurtling towards an uncertain future, their fates intertwined in a complex web of deceit, denial, and impending doom. The calm facade of village life was dissolving, revealing the raw, dangerous undercurrents that threatened to engulf them all. The week was drawing to a close, but for the residents of Emmerdale, the shadows only deepened. The air hummed with a tangible tension, a symphony of unspoken fears and impending betrayals. Today would be a day of stark choices, of insidious manipulations, and of a devastating revelation that would leave one man's world utterly shattered. The gentle facade of the village was now completely eroded, revealing a landscape scarred by desperation and the cold, calculating hand of evil. In the familiar warmth of the Woolpack, a place usually synonymous with comfort and camaraderie, Paddy Kirk, with his kind eyes and gentle demeanor, further solidified his role as a surrogate father figure in Dylan's turbulent life. Over a shared lunch, their conversation flowed easily, Paddy offering words of wisdom and genuine affection, a stark contrast to the predatory influence lurking in Dylan's periphery. Dylan, in turn, found a fleeting moment of peace, a brief respite from the relentless pressure of Ray. He listened intently to Paddy, absorbing the unconditional care, a yearning for normalcy warring with the terrifying reality of his situation. Paddy's presence was a beacon, a reminder of the innocence and moral compass Dylan was rapidly losing. But this fragile sense of security was brutally interrupted. A sudden, unexpected delivery arrived, an expensive, gleaming new gaming console, discreetly arranged by Ray. The gift was a gilded cage, a potent symbol of Ray's insidious manipulation. Dylan's heart sank, the joy he might have felt instantly replaced by a wave of nausea. He understood the unspoken message: Ray owned him, and this generosity was merely another link in the chain, tightening its grip, pulling him further away from the genuine care of people like Paddy. He was torn, caught between the warmth of true affection and the chilling allure of a devil's bargain, the expensive console a tangible representation of his soul slowly being bartered away. Speaking of Ray, his sinister influence spread its tendrils further, ensnaring April in a web of despair. Driven to the brink by the crushing weight of her debt, April, her voice barely a whisper, confronted Ray, desperately seeking an end to her nightmare. "How much more, Ray? How much more do I owe you?" she pleaded, her eyes filled with a raw, desperate hope. But Ray, his smile a reptilian sneer, saw only an opportunity to deepen his control. His words were velvet poison. "There's more you can do, April. Much more. To clear that debt faster." And then, the chilling moment that would forever alter April's path, he produced a sleek, burner phone, its anonymity a terrifying symbol of her new life. "Welcome to the family, April," he purred, the words dripping with mock warmth. "You're one of us now." He inducted her fully, irrevocably, into becoming a drug dealer, her young hands now tainted by the tools of his trade. The phone felt like a brand, a permanent mark of her forced complicity. Her innocence, already fractured, shattered completely in that instant. The image of her future flashed before her eyes, a life steeped in fear, secrecy, and criminality. As April stood there, her world crumbling, Ray's eyes, ever scanning, landed on Laurel Thomas, who was passing by. A flicker of cold interest, a predatory gleam, crossed his face. He saw not just another villager, but a potential new victim, another piece in his elaborate, dangerous game. But the day's most devastating blow was reserved for Liam Kavanagh. At the Emmerdale surgery, the facade he had so meticulously maintained finally, spectacularly, crumbled. The pain, the dizziness, the profound sense of physical decline had reached a terrifying crescendo. Manpreet Sharma, whose growing concern had evolved into a gut-wrenching dread, burst into his consulting room, having heard a muffled thud. What she witnessed would forever be etched in her memory. Liam, his face ashen, his body shaking uncontrollably, was desperately urinating into the hand basin in his consulting room, his trousers soiled. The sight was horrifying, a visceral testament to his body's complete betrayal and his utter loss of control. "Liam." Manpreet's voice was sharp, laced with shock and deep concern. She rushed to him, her professional composure momentarily cracking. The shame, the humiliation, the sheer physical agony washed over Liam in a tidal wave. He finally broke, the stubborn denial dissolving into a flood of raw despair. Manpreet, regaining her composure, delivered a stern, yet compassionate, talking to, her medical knowledge overriding her personal shock. "This has gone too far, Liam. You need help, and you need it now." The words were a lifeline, cutting through the fog of his pain and denial. Forced to confront the horrifying reality of what was happening to his body, Liam finally, completely, opened up. He sought out Charles Dingle, a trusted confidant, his voice hoarse with despair as he confessed the full, terrifying extent of his symptoms, the fear of an uncertain future hanging heavy in the air. The image of the bidet, a symbol of his professional downfall and personal humiliation, would haunt him, a stark reminder of the day his life irrevocably changed. As the sun set on Emmerdale, casting long, menacing shadows across the village green, the sense of impending doom was almost suffocating. A young girl's soul had been sold to the devil, a father figure was unknowingly witnessing a terrible descent, and a respected doctor's life had been irrevocably shattered. The stage was set for a terrifying climax, where the consequences of these choices would soon unfold with brutal, undeniable force, forever altering the fabric of Emmerdale. The air in Emmerdale on this fateful Friday was thick with a premonition of disaster, a tangible sense of an ending and a beginning. The week's accumulated tension, secrets, and betrayals had reached a boiling point, threatening to erupt and consume everyone in its path. Today, the chickens would come home to roost, the hidden truths would be violently dragged into the light, and the village would bear witness to moments of shattering despair and desperate courage. The idyllic countryside was now merely a backdrop for a human drama of epic, tragic proportions. The fallout from Liam's devastating confession to Charles Dingle reverberated throughout the village, sending shockwaves through the close-knit community. Jez, reeling from the raw honesty of Liam's breakdown and the horrifying sight she witnessed, became his reluctant anchor in a turbulent sea of fear. She urged him, with a fierce maternal protectiveness, to seek immediate medical attention, to face the terrifying truth head-on. Liam, stripped bare of his denial and professional pride, found himself in a state of profound vulnerability, his very identity as a healer now a cruel irony. He could no longer hide. As he finally agreed to see a specialist, the journey to the hospital felt like a walk to an execution. The sterile white walls and the hushed whispers of the medical staff only heightened his anxiety. His examination was a blur of cold instruments and probing questions, each one a hammer blow to his shattered ego. The words of the specialist, delivered with grave concern, hung in the air like a death knell, confirming his worst fears, a serious, aggressive illness, requiring immediate and intensive treatment. The diagnosis, though not explicitly stated for the audience, was clearly dire, painting a bleak picture of his future. Liam's world, once ordered and controlled, had imploded, replaced by a terrifying void of uncertainty and the chilling prospect of a battle for his life. He returned to Emmerdale, a ghost of his former self, the weight of his diagnosis a crushing burden, the silent battle ahead now a deafening roar. Jez, waiting for him, could see the unspoken despair in his eyes, the profound change in the man she knew. Meanwhile, the net around Dylan and April tightened to an unbearable degree. Ray, the puppet master, orchestrated his next move with chilling precision. He dispatched Dylan on a critical delivery, a package far more illicit and dangerous than anything he'd handled before. Dylan, his face a mask of grim determination, knew the risks were astronomical. His hands trembled as he drove, each turn of the wheel a step closer to catastrophe. The burner phone, now a constant companion, vibrated with Ray's terse, menacing instructions. He imagined Ray's eyes, cold and calculating, watching his every move, ready to pounce on any misstep. While Dylan was out on this perilous errand, April received her own chilling command. Ray tasked her with her first assignment, a seemingly simple transaction, but one that felt like a baptism of fire into the criminal underworld. Her heart pounded in her chest as she approached the designated location, her hands clammy, the burner phone feeling impossibly heavy. The innocence in her eyes was now clouded by fear and the burgeoning weight of her terrible secret. She imagined the disapproval, the horror, on Paddy's face if he knew what she was doing, a thought that made her stomach churn. But she saw no other choice, trapped by Ray's malevolent grip, sacrificing her soul for a freedom that seemed ever more distant. The tension reached a fever pitch at the Emmerdale depot, where Jai Sharma's suspicions about Caleb's business acumen finally boiled over. Jai, a man of integrity, had witnessed enough of Caleb's reckless and unethical practices. He confronted Caleb directly, his voice seething with barely contained fury. "What exactly are you doing here, Caleb? This isn't just bad business, it's borderline criminal," he accused, pointing to irregularities in the ledgers and blatant disregard for safety protocols. Caleb, his usual smooth veneer cracking under the pressure, retaliated with a cold, veiled threat, hinting at secrets Jai wouldn't want exposed, perhaps connected to his past, or even Charity's current predicament. The confrontation escalated into a furious shouting match, drawing the attention of other employees. Just as it seemed blows might be exchanged, Ruby Fox Milligan, driven by her relentless pursuit of the truth, arrived on the scene. She had followed Caleb, her instincts screaming that something was terribly wrong. She overheard snatches of the heated argument, glimpsing documents that hinted at illicit dealings and financial impropriety. Her eyes, filled with a mixture of shock and betrayal, locked onto Caleb. "What in God's name is going on here, Caleb?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. The game was up. Ruby had seen enough, piecing together the fragments of Caleb's deceit. The revelation of his clandestine activities, his dangerous involvement in Ray's illicit world, threatened to rip their marriage apart, exposing the rotten core of his ambition. As the day spiraled towards its conclusion, Emmerdale was left reeling. A beloved doctor faced a harrowing battle for his life, two young souls were being inexorably drawn into a terrifying criminal enterprise, and a marriage was on the brink of collapse due to devastating revelations. The week ended not with resolution, but with a crescendo of crisis, leaving the villagers, and the audience, gasping for breath, anxiously awaiting the inevitable, explosive consequences that Monday would surely bring. The serpent had fully embraced the village, and its venom was beginning to spread, threatening to poison everything it touched.